Fifth grade ELA text at 12. Achieving a dream. This is day 2 of Surfer of the Century. Fabrics reporters followed Duke around the beach at Waikiki, taking his photo and trying to interview him. The reporters found it difficult to get Duke to say much. He was too shy and humble to talk about himself. Then bad news arrived. Duke's new records were so amazing, amateur athletic union officials in New York refused to believe his times. "What are you using for stopwatches?" a sarcastic official asked. "Alarm clocks?" Duke was shattered. He feared everything was over. Trying to drown his disappointment, Duke grabbed his surfboard and headed to the ocean. "Coming down," he yelled as he launched his board over the crest of the waves. His friend made way for him. They knew how he felt. Meanwhile, word of Duke's record-breaking swimming times had swept the athletic world. AAU officials, curious about the young, untrained swimmer, wanted to see Duke swim for themselves. They invited him to the mainland to try out for the United States Olympic team. Thrilled by the news, Duke and his family huddled around the kitchen table. Money was tight. They didn't know how they would pay for Duke's boat trip to California. Soon, friends and supporters gathered to help. Coach Rollins arranged benefit potluck dinners and made generous donations. Duke's friends raised cash by performing a play on the deck of an abandoned ship, along with contributions from others. Enough money was raised to send Duke to the mainland. Filled with Olympic dreams, Duke said goodbye to family and friends and boarded an ocean steamer to California in early February 1912. Rollins' work as an attorney kept him from traveling, so Duke was accompanied by 2 members of his swim team. Lou Henderson acted as manager, and Dude Miller was the swimming trainer. In Los Angeles, Duke stared wide-eyed at the crowded streets. This big city was very different from his island home. Reporters described Duke as a strange-looking, dark-skinned native from distant lands. People stared at him. Restaurant waiters pretended not to see him. After a few awkward meals, Duke decided to eat alone in his hotel room, so that Henderson and Miller would not be embarrassed by his presence. Duke's first qualifying race was in Chicago when he got off the train from Los Angeles. The icy winter wind bit through his thin suit coat. Looking for a way to stay warm, Duke stuffed cardboard under his coat and kept it tightly buttoned. The cardboard was secret until Duke unthinkingly pulled off his coat in the changing room of the Chicago Swim Stadium. Everyone laughed as the cardboard fell to the floor. Duke burned with embarrassment, but told himself to focus on the swimming. He knew he was good as any swimmer alive. Duke won the 100 yards freestyle race in 57 seconds. He was on his way to being accepted for the Olympic team. Pittsburgh was even colder than Chicago. Upon arriving, Duke hurried into a restaurant to order a bowl of hot soup. The waiter took one look at Duke's dark skin and asked him to leave. Humiliated, he headed for the door. Just then someone called, "Hello, Duke. How about joining us?" Duke turned to see a friend who visited Hawaii every few years. People were staring, but his friend said, "Waiter, please have another place to sit at my table for the sensational Hawaiian swimmer, Duke Kamanamuku." Duke downed his food as fast as he could. He thanked his friend and his friend's companions, invited them to visit him in Hawaii, and hurriedly left the restaurant. So, what obstacle is Duke facing now that he's arrived on the American mainland? How is he coping with it? What does that reveal about Duke's character? That night in the Pittsburgh Stadium, Duke was tense with anticipation. He was competing against world-class swimmers, and every one of them wanted a place on the Olympic team. Duke dived into the pool, ready to prove himself. The water was freezing. His left leg cramped, and to his horror, Duke found he couldn't swim. He came to a crippled halt and had to be pulled from the pool. Surrounded by the booing crowd, Duke looked down sadly at his big, cold feet. He had always thought he could depend on his body, but this time it had failed him. The next day, Duke decided to swim around the pool before his first race to get his body used to the icy temperature. The crowd jeered, calling him a show-off. Duke tried to ignore the taunts. He climbed out of the pool and stood alone, waiting for the other swimmers to line up. His mind went back home. He thought of all the people who had paid for his trip, and his family, friends, and coach, who were praying for him to succeed. He couldn't disappoint them. From that moment, Duke hit the water. He swam with spectacular speed, used to open ocean racing. He lost time on turns, but made up the loss with his furious arm strokes and powerful flutter kicks. He won the 100-yard race and then the 50-yard race, beating the world records with seconds to spare. Now on his side, the spectators screamed their support. The endless swimming and hard work had paid off. Duke was going to the Olympic Games in Stockholm. He would be the first Hawaiian ever to swim in the Olympics, competing against the strongest swimmers from around the world. The competition would be fierce, but Duke ached to test himself against these legendary athletes. The Olympic ship, the SS Finland, arrived in Sweden in July 1912. The sky was overcast and the water looked dark and cold. Crowds of reporters rushed the athletes as they milled around on the ship's deck. The reporters had many names for Duke: human fish, half man, half fish, merman, paddle wheel, steamer, and they showered him with questions about his amazing speed. Duke answered the reporters' questions as best as he could. Escaping to the top deck, Duke found a sheltered spot and sat talking with a new friend, Native American track and field star Jim Thorpe. Like Duke, Jim was a natural athlete, virtually self-trained. They had both made it onto the Olympic team at a time when people of color rarely competed for the United States. "Jimmy," Duke said, "you can run, jump, throw things, and carry the ball. You do everything, so why don't you swim too?" "Duke, I saved that for you to take care of," Jim said grimly. Summers in Sweden have almost 24 hours of daylight, and Duke found it hard to get enough sleep at night. So on the morning of his first race, he decided to take a nap in his cabin. Crowds had gathered at the Stockholm Olympic swimming venue. The Swedish royal family, diplomats, military officers, and thousands of fans were there to watch the popular 100-meter freestyle race. Kanamuku wanted on the starting platform, an official announced over the public address system. After a few moments, the official reported loudly, "Kamuku wanted on the starting platform." Duke did not appear. Frantically, his teammates searched the swimming stadium. Then they raced to the ship and searched there. Michael McDermott, the U.S. breaststroke champion, found Duke and shook him awake. At the stadium, Duke pushed through the crowds and approached the starting official. "Where have you been?" the frowning official demanded. I'm sorry," Duke apologized. "I've been sleeping." The official told him he was too late. Silence fell on the crowd. Duke thought he would die. Everything he had worked so hard for gone in an instant. He had missed his race in the Olympics. Suddenly, Cecile Healy, Australia's star swimmer, called out for Duke to be allowed in the race. Healy refused to swim unless Duke competed, even though Duke was his main threat. It seemed as though no one in the stadium breathed. Duke stared at the ground and waited for a minute that seemed to go on forever. Finally, the official relented, giving Duke a curt nod. Adrenaline pumping through his body, Duke lined up with Breeding and Ram from Germany, Longworth and Healy from Australia, and Haswag from the United States. The starting pistol cracked and the 6 swimmers hit the water. Duke was up first from his dive, slicing through the water at 25 meters. Duke was well ahead. Then from the corner of his eyes he saw Healy coming up fast. Duke powered on, ripping across the pool, his body lifting up and forward. The crowd roared. With Healy on his heels, Duke slammed the finish line, clocking 63.4 seconds, a new Olympic record. Healy was 1.2 seconds behind Duke, had won Olympic gold. King Gustav of Sweden was so impressed with Duke that he personally awarded him the gold medal and placed the wreath of victory on his head. Duke smiled and stammered his thanks. His smile grew wider when the king also honored Duke's friend Jim Thorpe, who had won 2 gold medals. Suddenly Duke was an international champion, and sports fans everywhere wanted to see the big Hawaiian swim. Duke obliged, competing in swimming pools all over Europe and even in the Seine River in Paris. Back in the United States, he taught swimmers on the East Coast to surf. Although public beaches and pools on the mainland were mostly closed to people of color, Duke's exhibitions were at first step toward integrating these facilities. To the world, Duke became a symbol of Hawaii. When newspapers reported that Duke was a descendant of ancient Polynesian kings, he modestly replied that he was just a beach boy from Waikiki. Duke also tried hard to present a good image and live up to people's expectations. He slipped up only once. Traveling on a slow-moving steamer, Duke found the sparkling ocean just too tempting. When the boat's engine stalled and was being repaired, he dived over the side for a quick swim. The rough sea quickly pulled Duke and the ship in opposite directions. Duke swam as hard as he could, but he couldn't make it back. With passengers yelling, "Man overboard," he was rescued by a lifeboat. Duke's return to Honolulu on October 1912 was triumphant. Thousands of supporters met the ship. Cannons boomed, music filled the air. Duke's family and friends rushed the gangway and piled colorful leis around his neck. The sweet-smelling flowers reached right up to Duke's eyes. He had to peek over them to see the welcoming crowd. I'm going to stop there.